What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be bringing you guys what I believe to be the best Fortnite settings on console. And I kind of went over these settings in my old video, my controller video, but I didn't really go into depth of what other settings you should use. I only went over build types and sensitivity. But this video will be a more in-depth explanation of what settings you should run, why you should run it, and just overall settings in general. I'm still going to go over the controller settings that I went over in my first video, but I'm also going to go over settings I didn't cover the first time. I'm going to start off with controller settings just because I believe that controller settings are the most important thing in Fortnite. There's other minor settings that exist in the game, but controller settings and build types are 100% the most important, and these other settings you might not even want to change around just because it's more of a personal preference. But with controller settings, I would say there is sort of a template or style you do want to be running. So we're going to start with controller configuration because in my opinion this is the most important thing when it comes to building and just playing Fortnite. Builder Pro is hands down the best thing that you can go for in this class. I think that no other building option compares to it just because of the fact that each key is mapped to its own button. So floors is mapped to R1 and stairs is mapped to L2, whatever it may be. Every key is mapped to its own button, so you don't have to be cycling through. The next most important thing is controller sensitivity. This is kind of a personal subject. It's up to you what you want to use, but I recommend running anything over 7 sensitivity. I think anything below 7 sensitivity is too slow to run. You can see me comparing the different sensitivities in my old controller video if you want to go back and watch that, but run anything over 7 sensitivity, and my best recommendation in what I run is X sensitivity is 9 and my Y sensitivity is 8. I keep my X sensitivity at 9 just because it allows me to build really fast, and when you're building you're going to be spinning around everywhere, and that's where your X axis is. It's just looking left and right. And my Y axis is 8 just because I feel like it helps a little bit more with aiming. I feel like it's a perfect fit just so you can have that build speed and you can have a little bit of accuracy with it. As for my ADS sensitivity and my scope sensitivity, they're around the same default numbers that exist in the game. I didn't really want to touch them too much just because I felt they're perfectly fine. And I honestly feel like the default numbers are fine as is, so you guys don't need to really change that at all. Up next is control options. We're going to skip over camera and display just because that setting is not important at all. But for control options, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down to the bottom. I just think it's going to be a lot easier to follow if I do that. So starting with the first one, which is sprint by default, I have this off just because I honestly find it to be quite annoying. What it does is it makes sure you never have to click down on your analog stick to sprint. It automatically does it for you, and you can see why it can be irritating. But I have it off just for the plain reason I like to sprint and control my speed on my own. The next one, which is sprint cancels reloading, I have that off just because there's a lot of other ways to cancel reloading, and I feel like sprint just shouldn't be one of the buttons you use to cancel reloading. That's just a personal preference though. Then there's tap to search. I keep this one off just because I like controlling my character, like what I like to interact with. I know a lot of people actually that keep this on, like my friends and so what. But I keep this off just as a personal preference. It's up to you. You can play around with this, see which one you like more. But for me, I have it off. Next is toggle targeting. I have that one off for obvious reasons. You just don't want to be running toggle targeting. It should be self-explanatory. But the setting after that is honestly kind of important, which is to reset your building choice. It doesn't matter as much now that Builder Pro exists, but it still makes sure your wall is the first thing that pops up. So it's very easy to pull out your walls when you're in gunfights or someone's shooting at you. Then we have aim assist, which is very self-explanatory on why you should have it on. I don't think any console player should have that off. Just make sure you have it on if you do have it off. Then we have edit mode aim assist. I see a lot of people still have this on, but trust me, you want to take this off just because it will greatly benefit your editing speed. This is because when you have aim assist on, it takes you to the closest circle inside of the tiles that you're editing, and that'll probably like mess up your editing or how consistent you are at editing. And when you have this off, you're able to freely flow on what tiles you want to choose. The aim assist when editing is probably the most noticeable when you're trying to rotate stairs while editing. It becomes a lot harder just because it locks for no reason, but without that on, it makes it a lot easier. Then we have turbo building, which is very important as well, and I feel like this is also a must to keep on just because of how easy it makes building. When you have it off, you have to constantly press down the button. If you want to place a ramp, you'll constantly have to press down L2. While turbo building, you can just hold down the button and it'll rapidly do it for you. Next, you have auto material change, which is also a must. You want to keep that on at all times just because it'd be really annoying to cycle through your materials when you run out. You'd want it to have it automatically do it for you. And for controller auto run, I have that off, and I recommend that you keep it off too. I find it to be really buggy and unreliable. Sometimes it'll stop, sometimes it doesn't. So I'd rather just not deal with the problems at all, and I just take it off completely. And for auto open doors, I also keep that off just because I don't think it's beneficial in any way. I feel like you should always control the doors you're opening and closing. Just because there could be people there hiding behind doors or something, you want to be able to control what doors you open and close. Then there's auto pickup weapons. This is also something you want to keep off just because you don't want it to sort the weapons for you, and you don't want to walk past something and it pick it up automatically for you, especially when there's a bunch of material and weapons all stacked together. You want to pick what you get from those item groups, and you should do that yourself. Then we have auto sort consumables to the right. This is a brand new setting they just added in the latest patch they did, and I still decided to keep it off just because I like to choose where my meds go, and I honestly don't keep them all the way to the right. So just do what you do as a preference for this one. If you like to keep your meds to the right, make sure you use this. If not, then keep this off. As for vibration, that's a personal preference whether you want it on or not. For me, it's really comfortable and I'm just really accustomed to it, so it feels weird if it's off, so I keep it on. But again, that's just personal preference. Those settings at the bottom really don't matter at all, and I'm not going to go over them. Same reason I'm not going to go over the sound and video settings, just because that's personal preference. That's 100% up to you. But the last set of settings I'm going to go over, which is the HUD settings, you have to access it by actually going into the game. You can't see it for some reason when you're in the normal main menu and you try to go through your settings screen. You have to actually be in a game for you to change your HUD settings. And for those settings, you want to have all of them on. They should all be on by default, but the only one that might not be on is net debug stats, which you also want to turn on, just because it shows your ping and it lets you know whether or not you're lagging, which I find to be very important. I want to know what ping I'm at, and it also shows packet loss, so if you have a high amount of packet loss, you can know that your internet's lagging and you can just see what's going on. Those are all of the important settings for console. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe if you're new.
Yeah, hey. I can't wait for the day when I know that I'm famous. Wait for the day when I run entertainment. Foreign switching lanes, yeah, the money be piling. Billboard hits, goddamn, I'm styling. Billboard hits, goddamn, I'm wildin'. So many hits, goddamn, I'm drowning. So many hits, goddamn, I'm